morning, everybody. For those of you who are newer to Oasis, I'm Alexis Potaman, and when I am the MC, we tend to run on Oasis time, so sorry for starting a couple minutes late. So like I said, my name is Alexis Potaman. I'm on the board. I'll be your MC today. We have a fantastic lineup for you today. We have Ermelinda, Cuellar, and jazz duo as our musicians, and we have Dan Potter as our main speaker. And I always like to start the day with talking about or highlighting a couple of our core values to get the day started. And today I want to highlight human hands solve human problems, and meaning comes from making a difference. So with that, let's go ahead and get the day started with some music. Thank you.
Hello, good morning. How are you, Houston Oasis? Good morning. My name is Ermelinda Cuellar, and it's our pleasure to play for you guys this morning. And with me on guitar will be Glenn Ackerman, who, by the way, you'll see next week with his group. Just letting you know. So we're going to do a song called On the Street Where You Live, which some of you might know is from the musical My Fair Lady. My Fair Lady. So the last take. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. I have often walked down the street before, but the pavement never left my feet before. All at once am I several stories high, knowing I'm on the street where you will be. Are the lilac trees in this part of town? Can you hear a lark sing in any other part of town? Does enchantment pour out of all these doors? No, it's just on the street where you'll be. And oh, the towering feeling, just to know somehow you are near. The oh, empowering feeling that any second, moment, minute you might suddenly appear. People stop and stare, well, you don't bother me, 'cause there's no place on this earth that I'd rather be. Well, let the time go by, 'cause I don't care if as long as I'm on the street where you will be. And all that towering that oh empowering feeling that any second, moment, minute you might suddenly appear. People stop and stare. Well, you don't bother me, 'cause there's no place on this earth that I would rather be. Well, let the time go by, 'cause I don't care if as long as I'm on the street where you will be. As long as I'm on the street where you will be. Thank you very much. Thank you much. I'm Glenn Ackerman on guitar. We're going to do a song called Gentle Rain. So we'll kind of make a little poppy-ish. We are both lost and alone in this world. Walk with me in this gentle rain. Don't be afraid, I've a hand for your hand, and I will be your love for a while. I can see your tears as they fall from your cheek. They are warm like the gentle rain. Come, little one, you have me in this world, and our love will be sweet, but very sad, like the gentle rain, like this gentle rain, like the gentle rain. Fo-fo-de-dum-da-dum-dee. Vo-dum-dum-dum-dum-dum-dum-dum. Vo-da-dum-dum-dum-beep-bo-beep-bo. Fro-vo-wi-vo-vo-vo-wi-vo-wi. Fa-da-doo-wee. Wo-bo-wo-bo-wo-do. Vo-do-vo-vo-wo. Oh, down, 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 eh. Shoo-da-dum-gung-gung-gung-gung-gung, eh. Bo-ba-da-beep-bo-bo-bo-bo-bo-bo-do-bo, eh. Ba-da-da-dee-doo-doo-doo-ee. And we are both lost and alone in this world. Come walk with me in the gentle rain. Don't be afraid, I've a hand for your hand, and I will be your love for a while. I can see your tears as they fall from your cheek. Oh, they are warm like that gentle rain. Come, little one, you have me in this world, and our love will be sweet, but very sad, like the gentle rain, like the gentle rain, like the gentle rain. Thank you. And I can-
Thank you so much. All right, and we will be hearing more after our coffee break as well, so we look forward to that. All right, our main speaker today is Dan Potter. He is the director of the Houston Population Research Center at the Kinder Institute for Urban Research at Rice University. In this role, Dan leads the survey work, including overseeing the Greater Houston Community Panel, a longitudinal panel of nearly 10,000 adult residents spread across Fort Bend, Harris, and Montgomery counties. So please help me welcome to the podium, Dan Potter.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Okay, I think I got eye contact over here, so hopefully everybody is feeling seen and visible this morning. Thank you for this opportunity to come here and speak with you today. As the title of the talk gives away, we're here talking about community health. I think one of the exciting things going on at the Kinder Institute right now is that we're not just focused on community health, but a variety of things. And so with that in mind, I want to give just a quick introduction. Many of you are probably familiar with us, but in case this is the first time you're hearing about the Kinder Institute, we at the Kinder Institute have a mission to improve lives through data, research, engagement, and action. This is engagement, so you are helping us in achieving our mission. Through our work, we have a vision of inclusive prosperity. If you look at the Houston area, you will see we are an incredibly prosperous area. We also know that that prosperity is not shared by all. And so what we want is a future in which we continue to be a prosperous area. We continue to be successful as an area, but we also see that prosperity and that success shared by all. The way in which we do that is through research. Getting information, data, statistics into the hands of decision makers. We have 5 different research centers. I have the opportunity to lead our population research. We also have research taking place in education, community and public health, economic mobility and inequality, as well as housing and neighborhoods. One of the important things that we want to make sure we're doing at the Kinder Institute is that while each of these is an important pillar of understanding our society, if you are only understanding one of these at a time, you are not understanding the systemic structural challenges that we are facing. And so this arrow on the bottom is a reminder to us that we should both be pursuing excellence within the work we are doing in our centers, as well as across those centers. Systemic challenges require systemic solutions. The way in which you do this research is a bit different than how you would typically see research being done by other think tanks. We oftentimes like to talk about ourselves as not just a think tank, but a think and do tank. We employ a research practice partnership model where we are not just sitting at Rice University going, I wonder what I should study today, which there are plenty at Rice who do that. But instead, we're working with community organizations, talking with those individuals who are leading and helping to make a better tomorrow, and wanting to know what are they needing to know? What is the information that they are after that will help inform, again, their decision-making, their policies, their programs? And here on our slide are a few examples of the partners that we have. Now, we are going to be going through a bunch of data today. The data that I'm going to be sharing with you is largely available to you if you are interested in learning more. And so while we're going to be going through a variety of different topics, statistics, I want to share one website up front that could be very helpful for folks, Understanding Houston. This is a website that looks at statistics for the 3 counties of Fort Bend, Harris, and Montgomery County. And so some of our data will be coming from here. If you are interested in looking at that website, that QR code in the upper right-hand corner will take you to that Understanding Houston webpage. We do have a bit we are going to try to cover today. And so with that in mind, we will be looking at things around general self-reported health, maternal mortality, early prenatal care, low birth rate, infant mortality, child mortality, youth and adult mental health challenges, as well as access to services, things around child health service and child health insurance. We will be using largely national level data to try to get a glimpse at what this looks like in our area, and then we're going to turn our attention to looking at data collected locally through our Greater Houston Community Panel. All right, so to start with, we want to make sure we understand who is Harris County. Harris County has undergone a phenomenal transformation over the last half century. If you look back at the 1960s, there were already a bunch of people here. We see this bar over here, already north of 1 million residents in Harris County. However, it was largely a biracial community, white and black. As time has passed, the community has continued to grow, now north of 4.6 million residents. But what's exciting is in that growth, there has also been a diversification. And so now we are one of the most diverse metropolitan areas in the country, where you have about 30% white, you've got about 20% black, over 40% Hispanic, and 10% Asian residents. Again, this is one of the most diverse areas in the nation. So that's who's here. And so it's important for us to keep that in mind, because as we're talking about different statistics today, we're going to be talking about disparities and gaps that are in our health system. And the reason to start with talking about the population is we're not talking about, just a handful of folks. We are talking about large segments of our population experiencing health disparities. I will also say, just warning up front, I've given this talk a couple times. At the end of it, I have been told multiple times that people just need to sit with that information. It's a bit heavy. I don't have a lot of good news for you this morning. Now, again, I don't know that it's going to be a surprise, but sometimes just having the reality of what we are living in and through right now, confronting us through statistics and information, can be heavy. So I'm just going to throw that up front. My goal is not to leave us all in a depressed stupor, but I think, again, we need to have these types of conversations if we're going to do something about this. So, getting into it. First, we're going to start with looking at self-reported health. Only 56% of women in Texas between ages of 18 and 44 have reported their own health as being very good or excellent. The other half would be fair or poor. You can contrast that with the national average of about 59. This puts us number 42 in the country. When we look at maternal mortality, we see a notable uptick in this mortality, both in Texas as well as the U.S. However, Texas is outpacing the rest of the U.S. here. And again, remarkable here is that this is 2018, and then our latest year of data is 2021. This is the span of essentially 3 years watching this deterioration to maternal health. Texas ranks in the bottom quarter of states when it comes to maternal mortality. And we can see some of the color coding here. It is not a coincidence that there are darker blues in the South. And again, this is looking at data from 2020 to 2022. While we can look at that overall statistic and already begin grimacing about the conditions that we are providing when it comes to maternal health, when we look at maternal mortality, we must recognize that it is not shared equally across our groups. When you want to talk about contemporary tragedies in our society, it is black mothers' maternal mortality rates that should rise to the top. That first bar is the maternal mortality for black women, and then the second bar, white, third Hispanic, fourth Asian. Black more than twice as much as white, twice as much as Hispanic, and 3 times, more than 3 times, that of Asian. Part of what is contributing to this is that we see lower percent of women receiving maternal health here, prenatal care here in Harris County as well as Texas, in contrasting to the rest of the country. Here in Harris County, that's going to be our bar to the far left. About 60% of mothers report receiving some sort of prenatal care during pregnancy. In Texas, it is at 66%. Both of these numbers much further behind the rest of the country, which sits at 76%. Perhaps a bit of an anomaly or an unexpected is that even though we do see these challenges around maternal health here in Houston and Texas, when you look at infant mortality rates, when you look at low birth rates, what you do see is that despite the lower quality, the lower care provided to mothers, that there's not a higher elevated low birth rate for newborns. And that's true across each of these different groups, but again, we can sort of call attention to that while Houston and Texas are relatively aligned with the rest of the country, we can note that, again, this racial ethnic disparity that exists where Asian, Hispanic, and white infants all relatively low levels of low birth rate, again, less than 10%, for black babies up at 14%. So again, we can sort of see what we were learning earlier about some of this race disparities echoed again in this statistic. While we were looking at low birth rate there, we can switch to look at another indicator of the health of newborns, which is infant mortality. And again, we do see infant mortality rates in Houston and Texas following very closely with that of the rest of the country for across all of these different groups, but we once again want to call attention to the fact that we are seeing racial ethnic differences with our first bar being Asian, our third being Hispanic, our fourth being white, all of them relatively similar in height, and it is again this second set of bars belonging to black infants where we see this higher elevated level of infant mortality. To keep this narrative going and to continue to call attention to some of these challenges and disparities in the health outcomes of different race ethnicity groups, we can look at children's mortality rates, specifically comparing Texas and Harris County, and we can see again this narrative just continues. We have Asian, white, and Hispanic, these first three sets of bars here on the vertical axis. Yes, there are some differences, but we can see them all relatively similar, and then it is this last set of bars where yet again we can see this disparity that exists in children's deaths among black individuals in our community in Harris County as well as the state. And again, we are not talking about a little bit different, we are talking about twice the size, whether we are looking at the gap for Asian, white, or Hispanic relative to black. And so again, we can see this disparity in mothers' conditions, and infants' conditions, and children's outcomes as it relates to maternal mortality, infant mortality, and again, children's deaths prior to the age of 18. Shifting gears a little bit to focus ourselves on mental health, we see among youth, almost 1 in 5 youth in Texas have experienced some sort of major depressiveness episode. This is coming from direct reports of children, and so we see here 18% reporting that they've had a major depressiveness episode, 12%, so about 1 in 8 have reported serious thoughts of suicide, and then our final bar, 8% have reported some sort of substance use disorder. And these are our youth, these are the children, this is our next generation coming through. Now, the challenge here is we all have our mental health issues. It is not a problem that there may be youth who are experiencing mental health challenges. It is that we are failing to meet those mental health challenges with services and access to resources that might be able to work with those youth. And so youth with private health insurance that did not cover mental and emotional problems, 11%. So again, this isn't talking about uninsured youth. This isn't talking about people without seemingly the resource we're told that we're supposed to have. These are the youth who have private health insurance. It's just that 1 in 10 of them, that health insurance doesn't cover those services to address mental health problems. And so we see a gap there. We see that 2/3 of youth, 68%, who reported having a major depressive episode, they did not receive mental health services. So again, you've got 1 in 5 reporting a major depressiveness episode. 2/3 of those did not receive any services for them. And then you might say, well, okay, but since if they didn't receive services, they must be, sort of getting out of it on their own. And while we could hope for that to be the case, the one thing we can also point to is that if they do, is there a guitar trying to jump? I just want to make sure nothing slides. That was a really good guitar. Oh, okay. For those who do get services, they work. And so while we might sit here and think to ourselves, well, it seems like youth they're getting by, right? Why should they just be getting by when they can be getting services that help? And so again, 2/3 of youth who do receive services report them as helping them with the challenges that they're experiencing. Youth are, of course, not alone in our mental health challenges here in Texas. We have 1 in 5 adults reporting having some type of mental health illness here in the state. So again, the specific number being 22%. When we look at other types of behavioral issues, we see 15% reporting substance use disorder, and then we also have 5% reporting serious thoughts of suicide, 1 in 20 adults in our state. So again, it's not that this is just an adolescent problem that people grow out of. This is a problem that people are carrying through out the lifespan, pointing to, again, larger systemic challenges that are driving those issues. One of the things that we can also sort of reflect on is it doesn't just take a serious mental health illness to have challenges with our mental health. And so asking and getting information from folks about how many days of poor mental health do you have? And again, not thinking necessarily clinical, just reports of poor mental health. And what we see here, these 2 bars are broken up male and female. In the Houston MSA, 10% of males report having 14 or more days of poor mental health. 15% of females report the same. These look very similar to the state as a whole. And so, again, it doesn't just, mental health is not a clinical, not clinical issue. It is recognizing that there are these differences that are these challenges that people are experiencing in their day-to-day lives with their mental well-being. And again, thinking about some of the challenges of, we have these mental health issues, what are we doing about them? We know that 1 in 4 adults with the mental health issue in Texas is uninsured. In this regard, Texas is the worst in the state, in the country. And so we have our challenges and we're not necessarily doing anything about them. And so we see there, that's the 23% bar in the middle. Adults reporting 14 or more mentally unhealthy days in a month who could not see a doctor due to cost. And so again, sort of building on that statistic from the last page, those adults who are saying, I am having many days, and again, by 14 days, we really are starting to talk about a half a month of poor mental health. 1/3 of those individuals were not able to go see a doctor due to costs. Just overall, 1/4 of adults with mental illness are uninsured. And then building on the statistic that we were sharing about youth, when you look at adults who have health insurance, 17%, so approaching 1 in 5 of those adults have health insurance that does not provide them with a service to address their mental health issues. And so again, we have these challenges. We've got resources there to do something. We have barriers in cost, and we have barriers in terms of quality when it comes to our insurance and accessing treatments, therapy, and other services that might help with us being better. Focusing a little bit more on health insurance here in Harris County. Overall, Harris County does have higher levels of uninsured children than the rest of the state and the U.S. However, those levels are relatively low if you look at Asian, Black, and white children. However, among Hispanic children, which is going to be our third set of bars in this graph, 1 in 5 Hispanic children in Harris County are without health insurance. This is largely reflected of the types of occupations and jobs here in the Houston area that are held by the parents of these children. All right, so that is leveraging national data that is coming from a variety of sources to talk and help us learn about our challenges with health. The rest of this presentation, I want to focus on information that we are gaining from hearing from residents, moving beyond just national statistics to hear from what we are experiencing here in the Houston area using the Greater Houston Community Panel. The Greater Houston Community Panel is currently a panel of almost 7,000 residents. Earlier we were talking about it being 10,000. We are in the process of recruiting an additional 3,000 individuals out of Fort Bend and Montgomery County. And so we will be at that 10,000 mark here starting, I think, next month. We administer surveys through this panel quarterly, doing them winter, spring, summer, and fall. This has been taking place since winter of 2023. Our surveys are offered in English and Spanish to try to make sure that we're accessing people in the language that is of their preference. We are always constantly exploring other languages as well, again, wanting to make sure that residents are able to respond in their language preference, not necessarily just because they could speak English if they may not prefer to. And so we want to make sure that we are making these things available. And then finally, we do provide incentives in order for people to complete the survey. I cannot stand up here and tell you how invaluable these people are to our work and then not actually put the money where my mouth is going. And so we do provide incentives as part of our survey. Our surveys, we tend to hear from about 5,000 Harris County residents. We weight those data in order to make them representative of Harris County's demographics. We can take this information and break it down across 30 different neighborhood areas so that we don't have to just talk about Harris County. We can talk about sub-geographies within the city and county. And we cover a variety of topics, looking at things like social connectedness, fear of and experience with crime, parks and green space, civic engagement. We also have a particular focus on disaster preparedness, collective efficacy, the energy transition, artificial intelligence. The list goes on and on. Again, we want to understand the experiences that people are having, the things that are on people's minds, and wanting to make sure that we are looking all of these to see how they are interconnected. And in particular, for purposes of today's presentation, we're going to focus on numerous, in addition to looking at some health outcomes, we're going to focus on non-medical drivers of health as well. We have done 2 surveys to date that have looked specifically at health. The first one took place in the spring of 2023, the second one in the spring of 2024. We can see the different topics that were covered on those different surveys. Our presentation today, what we're going to share out, is going to largely be focused on the spring 2024 health survey. And so some select findings from the spring 2024 health survey, we were asking that question again of self-reported health. Rate your health. 1 in 5 Houston area residents rates their physical health as poor or fair. When asked how many days they have of not good physical health, the average was 4 days of not good physical health. When asked about their mental health, 1 in 5 Houston area residents rates their mental health as poor or fair. When asked how many days of not good mental health they had in the last month, the average number of days was 5. And again, this is just your average typical response there. Looking at chronic health conditions, and I know this chart's not necessarily very viewer-friendly, but we are looking here at the most prevalent chronic health conditions reported. And to clarify this, it is self-reported. However, the question was asking, have you been told by a professional? Have you been diagnosed by a professional with one of the following challenges? The common chronic health condition reported was hypertension, high blood pressure. 1 in 4 residents reported having been diagnosed with that. 1 in 5 residents reported having been diagnosed with high cholesterol. 1 in 6 reported being diagnosed with some sort of mental health condition. Those could be things such as depression, as well as anxiety. And fewer than 4 in 10 Houston area residents reported having no chronic health conditions. And that's our final bar. It is the tallest, but again, just calling attention to the fact that less than 4 in 10 said, no, I do not have any chronic health conditions. Looking a little more specifically at mental health, we administered the PHQ-4, asking folks about anxiety and depressiveness. Nearly 3 in 10 Houston area residents present with mild symptoms around depressiveness and anxiety. About 1 in 5 Houston area residents have depression or depressiveness or anxiety symptoms that are moderate or more, bordering there in the clinical region. When asked about the use of substances, and these could have been things such as illegal drugs or even using prescription medication for non-prescription reasons, about 1 in 12 Houston area residents reported that they were regularly using some sort of substance. Looking more specifically at this question around health insurance, about 1 in 5 Houston area residents reported not having health insurance. When we look at that by age as well as by race ethnicity, we saw this in the earlier chart using national data. For race ethnicity, we see it brought forward again here, where you've got a relatively similar amount of adults, Asian, Black, and white adults reporting having no health insurance. And then that bar, this is going to be our third bar down, that bar for Hispanic adults. Nearly 1 in 3 Hispanic adults reporting not having health insurance. But then we can also, in our bottom graph, look at this by age, recognizing that for older adults, they are reporting having health insurance. That's that small third bar. But that again, we see almost 1 in 3 young adults defined as 18 to 29 years old, 1 in 3 being uninsured. What is the consequence and the impact of this on people's ability to access health care, to take care of needs that they might have? We had 1 in 3 residents reporting to us that in the last year they needed some sort of health care. They knew they needed to see a doctor. They knew they needed to go get a checkup on something, and they simply did not do it. And they did not do it because of health insurance, costs, access, and wanting to take care of it on their own. Switching gears a little bit to talk about some select non-medical drivers of health. When we talk about non-medical drivers of health, what we are talking about is people's environments, their behaviors, the things they do in their lives outside of any sort of hospital or doctor's office that have incredibly high importance for the outcomes of that doctor's office. Most of the data that is out there suggests that if you're talking about non-medical drivers, and folks, sometimes you'll hear non-medical drivers, social determinants of health is another phrase. We're talking about the same thing here. When we talk about health outcomes, sometimes we think to ourselves, well, it's the treatment, it's the service I get in the hospital, right? Some of the most recent data coming out is suggesting that if you want to understand health outcomes, 20% of it has to do with your doctor, the hospital, that healthcare service you're receiving. 80% of it are these non-medical drivers. And in some ways, this makes sense. The hour that I'm at the doctor's office should probably not make up for the every other waking moment of my life where I'm living in my home, my community, my school, wherever I might be. So there's a sense to this, but I also think it's just a reminder that we are talking about very important, relevant things when it comes to people's health. And so in looking at a handful of non-medical drivers of health, one of the things that is increasingly troubling and problematic here in the Houston area has to do with housing affordability. Now, this is a new challenge for Houston. I think it's important for us to call this forward. If you look at Houston back in 2010, 2011, your median home price was $165,000. Has anybody tried to buy a home recently? Yeah? Did you find many for 165? No. No, you're not, because it's now 335. And so I'm not trying to make light of that, and I hope you find the house that you're looking for. Oh, that's fantastic. Congratulations on that. But that's a very different price point. And in case you're thinking to yourself, well, ooh, houses doubled in price. Did our wages double in price? Okay, we all know the answer to that one. They absolutely did not. And so the cost of housing has outpaced us. And this is true for both purchasing a house as well as renting. Rent has continued to go up as well. And so 47% of Houston area residents report that they are worried about being unable to pay for their housing from 1 month to the next More than 1 in 5 Houston area residents report experiencing very low food security. Another 1 in 5 report low food security. Only 6 in 10 residents have moderate or high levels of food security. So this is about people going to sleep hungry, not because they chose to, not because they missed that dinner. They just don't have food in their house, and they don't have the resources in place to get more. We are currently experiencing an epidemic of loneliness. In some ways, this is what this group is attempting to address forefront and center. More than 4 in 10 residents, nearly half of residents in Harris County, reported having 0 social, cultural, or political groups that they belonged to and that they engaged with. And so this community that you all have access to through this Houston Oasis organization, this opportunity to come and collide with one another and have that interaction, something that is so important to us as humans, as social creatures, social animals that we are. 45% of our neighbors, 45% of the residents in our community cannot think of an organization that they are a member of that would provide them with that. We are experiencing an epidemic of loneliness. And I'm supposed to put a fine point on that. It's not in this slide. 1 in 10 report 0 close friends. So we might say, oh, I'm a homebody. Give me a bottle of wine and my Netflix, and I'm good to go. And maybe you've got that best friend that comes over, or you've got that neighbor you hang out with. 1 in 10 residents have 0 close friends that they're identifying with. So we not only have this lack of group membership, we also have many of our residents, many of our neighbors in our community experiencing 0 close friends. Looking at things like our physical activity, Houston, we love our cars, and so you don't necessarily have the natural walking capability that many other urban spaces do provide. And so when asking residents about what type of physical activity do they get, moderate or vigorous physical activity, by moderate we could be talking about things like walking, talking about things like gardening outside, physical activity, movement. Vigorous is going to be a little bit more, I think, your aerobics and other types of basketball or things. 1 in 5 residents reports 0 days of moderate or physical activity. In other words, very, very sedentary. And that is in a typical week. Looking to see where physical fitness might differ a little bit around our communities. We asked residents, in addition to how much physical fitness they were participating in, to do a little self-rating. And do they rate their physical fitness as poor, fair, good, very good, or excellent? And so here, what color is that showing up for you as? I guess the dark maroon color. That dark maroon color is where more than 45% of residents in those communities reported their physical fitness as poor or fair. And so we can see a variety of different spaces around our county where residents are experiencing relatively poor levels of physical fitness. And again, this is them. This isn't us asking them to fill out a checklist and us determining. This is them self-reporting. And so we've got a variety of topics that we can obviously cover and talk through in more depth and detail, but just a few takeaways here as we are thinking about Houston and who we are. Diversity really is, again, this goes back to our first slide. Diversity is our superpower. Everyone is here, anyone is here, but if we really want to take that and make it into our superpower, we cannot have prosperity be in the hands of the few. It has to be in the hands of the many. And so we've got to deliver inclusive economic gains moving forward. When we talk about some of the disparities that we saw around maternal health, when we saw around children's health, these are things that are direct reflections of economic well-being. And so this connection between economic well-being and health disparity, we must address these things in order to allow for our communities, our different communities, to grow, to thrive, and to prosper. We are going to have new and emerging challenges. One of the things I talk to people about, there are some parts of the country where we still want to debate climate change. Houston, the debate is over. It is here. It is happening. It is no longer a debate of, is it happening? It's what are we going to do? I love that fact. This is Houston taking on an emerging challenge head on and taking action around it. Houston is very good at taking action. It's something we do best. And then today, again, I've shared out with you information from our Houston surveys that was focused on Harris County residents. As Houston as an area becomes increasingly interconnected, where that drive between here and the woodlands, or here in Conroe, that used to involve farmlands, and you would not know where Houston ends and the next begins for the most part. And so we are increasingly interconnected, and so we want to make sure that we're bringing additional voices into the work that we're doing here at the Kinder Institute as well. And so we are growing to include the voices of others. And so, thinking about potential future opportunities to continue to share with you all more information that we're learning, we will hopefully have the voices of others included here as well. And so as I was mentioning, this expansion that we are taking place, one of the very important reasons why we want to make sure that we're hearing from the residents of Fort Bend and Montgomery County is, if you do the math, and I've had to do this multiple times because this statistic feels unreal to me, but if you do the math and you look at all of the populations in Fort Bend, Harris, and Montgomery County, 1 in 5 Texans lives here. We are very different communities. That is not a surprising statement to make. But we are also communities that share similar challenges and similar issues. And so while we might not agree on everything, when we do agree on something, this is a powerhouse of influence possible to go to Austin, to go to DC, and to bring resources into our community to address those shared challenges. And so we want to make sure that we're doing that, and that's why we are expanding into these 2 additional counties. Again, a lot of the statistics reported out today show up in a variety of our different research. All of our research is available free online, kinder.rice.edu/research. This QR code also takes you there as well. We are in the process of conducting our 44th annual Kinder Houston Area Survey. And so if you've been pestered by myself or one of my colleagues asking for you to complete a survey, please do. We love hearing from you. There's a gift card for you at the end of the day there. But it is also important to make sure that we are hearing from folks, because those are the voices that we get to bring out and share the insights and experiences of them through our research. Thank you.
Thank you so much. As a adult and former child who had mental health issues that went completely undiagnosed or untaken care of, I appreciate that research that you're doing. So, all right, before we go into a coffee break, after our coffee break, we'll come back for QA/QC. But I did want to bring your attention to our events that we have upcoming in our bulletin. One thing I did want to add was March 1st, next Saturday, we are going to be hosting Fish Stark here. He's the executive director of the American Humanist Association. Montrose Center has not officially confirmed it, but they've given us the code to the room, so I'm assuming it sounds like it's pretty confirmed to me. But so in addition to our Sunday gathering next Saturday, we will also be here 3 p.m. And I will invite Emily up here to talk about our survey.
Hey y'all, I'm Emily from that side of the room. And I just wanted to remind everyone that our annual survey, this is actually the last day because the results need to go to the board for their planning. So if you haven't taken it yet, the QR code is at the back table by the treasurer, and also known as Tim. I also have like 7 paper copies because it occurred to me some people don't like doing stuff on their phone. Took me a minute to think of that. So if you want to find me, I have 7 paper copies, or go to the back of the room by Tim and do the QR code. And just just so we are not total bummers, I wanted to let everybody know that if you know a youth who needs free mental health counseling, you can also talk to me because I can help you find that. So that is my extra bonus for you. Thanks.
All right, thank you so much. All right, with that, we'll take 10-minute coffee break. 10-minute coffee break. See you. Glenn? Yeah, oh, just one, yeah. All right.
Testing one. Okay, good. Just want to make sure. All right, we're going to do a song you guys might know. It's a Journey song called Who's Crying Now? So we're going to do that for you. Okay. A one, a two, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's been a mystery, but still they try to see how something so good can hurt so bad. Caught in a one-way street that tastes so bittersweet. Well, love will survive somehow, some way. One love feeds the fire, one heart burns desire, and I wonder who's crying now. Two hearts born to run, who will be the lonely one? I wonder who's crying now. So many stormy nights, so many wrong or rights, neither can change their headstrong ways. And in a lover's rage, they tore another page, 'cause fighting is worth the love they save. One love feeds the fire, one heart burns desire. I wonder who's crying now. Two hearts born to run, who will be the lonely one? I wonder who's crying now. So many tears you can cry till the heartache is over, and then you will say that your love will never die. So many stormy nights, so many wrong or rights, and neither can change their headstrong ways. And in a lover's rage, they tore another page, 'cause fighting is worth the love they save. One love feeds the fire, one heart burns desire. I wonder who's crying now. Two hearts up on the run. Well, who will be the lonely one? And I wonder who's crying now. So many tears you can cry till the heartache is over. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Some of us were talking over the coffee break about how y'all's music is just amazing and kind of gives our brains that like scratchy good feeling. All right, so at this time, I'll invite Dan Potter back up here to answer some questions. We'll pass around the microphone. So if you have a question, raise your hand. We'll get you the microphone. That way, everyone in the room can hear your question. People watching this via stream can hear your question. And so we just appreciate it if you wait until you get the microphone before you ask your questions.
Testing.
Yeah. So what are the major medical conditions that show up for the maternal and infant mortalities?
In terms of like what is contributing into the statistics that we're seeing?
Yeah, what specific medical conditions are causing those losses?
So that wasn't within the data that was available, and so unfortunately I'm not able to speak directly to that. And so that would be some other information, though, that would be available through a variety of different sources, looking at research that is on maternal health. And that could provide information about, like, you know, so when we're talking about the prenatal care, a lot of that is just the visits to the doctor. It would be things like vitamins and other nutritional supplements that take place and that should be happening there. But in terms of the actual like mother mortality stuff, that is going to be information that I do not have.
Hi, so I was wondering, just to kind of flip it around, if in the data there is anything that you've seen that's more like community strengths based, or if there's anything that you've noticed trends that are kind of positive for the social determinants of health that have been in the Houston area across time.
Yeah, so we are in the process right now of actually doing some research trying to look at what are the assets of Houston. Houston is very fascinating in that relative to other major metropolitan areas around the country, we continue to grow. We continue to add people in a way that you just don't see happening elsewhere. There's a reason people are coming here. What are those reasons? What are the things about this area that are attractive to people? Some preliminary results suggest it's a lot of economically driven, that people feel that they are able to get ahead here in Houston in a way that's just not really available in many other major metropolitan areas. We were talking earlier about something like the cost of housing. While that cost of housing in Houston has gone up in ways it had not gone up before, it is still a relatively affordable place to live if you were to contrast it with a place like Austin, with places like Dallas, Chicago, Atlanta, to say nothing of your LAs, New Yorks, San Franciscos, right? And so there is a challenge of affordability that we are experiencing in an unprecedented way while also having a relative position of affordability still. And so that brings people into the Houston area. Now, those types of factors don't necessarily build community, though. And so some of the things that we've looked at to perhaps get at that space of community have been around disasters, which is both this weird space to look for community, but is oftentimes where you see community really stepping forward. I know, especially last year after Hurricane Beryl, there was sort of this mentality of we are tired of being hashtag Houston strong. But there's a reality to when Houston goes through experiences that it goes through, there is a rallying that takes place. I don't care what your religion is. I don't care what your politics are. I don't care what your race is. I don't care what your age is. I don't care. I care about you as a human. And together as a human, we're going to build back again. We're going to pull these limbs off the road. We're going to get it off your house. We're going to get that fence put back up. We're going to work together to make ourselves whole. There are beautiful stories coming out of disasters of community coming together in a way that you don't necessarily see elsewhere. I think there's also a reality behind that should acknowledge that some of that's temporary, a lot of that's temporary, and that's relying on natural disasters to be a community it's a weird way to go about it. But I think, again, it's one of those things to call forward, is that when the going gets tough, Houston tends to get going together. And so I would point to that as another space that we've seen, at least, people sort of raising their hand and saying, yeah, again, following Beryl, people just sort of, I helped neighbors who I didn't know. And why? Because that's what you do. People raising their hand and saying, I got help that I wasn't expecting to get from my neighbors. Why? Because that's just what we do. And so I think it's those types of events that help bring us together. And I don't want to sound like a cheap answer, but food is a remarkably important piece of Houston as well. And because oftentimes you talk about like what do you mean you've got all these cultures sort of side by side and together, and people will point at the food, and I think there's something both beautiful and somewhat stilted about that. We should understand each other's culture beyond our stomachs, but also it's a good starting point. And so when talking with residents about what is it that you enjoy about the Houston, what keeps you here, food is one of those things that people point to as like, the benefits of having such a diverse, heterogeneous society.
Hi, I have a specific statistical question. In regards to your chronic conditions slide, I'm wondering if that's broken down into age groups, because the 1 in 4 or whatever that identified themselves as having a chronic condition, so I'm wondering how much of that is young people, because we know that's also on the rise.
Yeah, so with the chronic health condition, what I was reporting was overall. When you break that down by age, perhaps not surprisingly, there are some that go up. So for example, hypertension, high cholesterol, that is going to have a even higher rate among your older adults, as well as, think of it as your classic stair-step pattern. Older adults, the highest rate, middle-ish adults below that, and then young adults, the lowest rate there. But you can also look at other health conditions like mental health, and you do not necessarily see that stair-step pattern because there's not really, that's not a necessarily lifespan challenge there. So we've examined some of that through different lenses like age. We've looked at it as well by race, ethnicity, and unfortunately, you see similar patterns to what we were observing earlier through some of the national data of differences by race, ethnicities, particularly between Black and other groups, the other groups. And so didn't show that here, but yes, you do see differences across different age groups. And I guess just to speak specifically to your young adult point, it is not zero for any of the groups, right? It's not that this all belongs to one age group and none to the other, but there is that stair-step pattern for some of the chronic health conditions.
Okay, first, I would like to just back up what you said about in natural disasters, people helping people. I lost a home in Harvey. People showed up from everywhere. It was amazing. It's not good to lose your home, but I will never forget the interaction that I had with people I didn't know. I mean, my Lord. My real question is, though, I'd like to know how I noticed that the Asians were like doing better than just about everybody in all those categories. So I wondered, how do you define Asian, and to what do you attribute that difference?
So we define Asian through so it's self-identification, and so these would be individuals that either select the Asian category or they select an other group, and then they specify themselves by an ethnicity or nationality that is sorted typically under the umbrella of Asian. So you could think Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Vietnamese, Pakistani, Asian Indian, Filipino. I think those are our larger groups, but that list clearly, obviously would go on and on and on. That is the way in which we, let people sort of identify themselves, and then we can classify folks accordingly. Why we see what we see there is a fascinating question. There's actually a lot of below the surface questions that don't make a ton of sense if you look across other demographics, and you get something of an immigrant paradox. You get something of a Hispanic paradox, where if you take our different groups and you look at them by other socioeconomic markers. And so by socioeconomic markers, I'm talking about annual earnings, education level, even things like renter versus homeowner status. You see a lot of similarity between groups, Black, Hispanic, Asian, and then white is oftentimes different. And again, this is our systemic system at play. But then when you look at these health outcomes for Hispanic and for Asian, as you're pointing out, they don't look like the health challenges and issues that we observed within the Black population. What is going on there? And that is a consistent paradox that has popped up in the data over and over and over again. People have examined, again, things like food habits, eating habits, physical exercise, worship, coming together collectively. And there is something to be said about the social interaction component. But it continues to persist as a paradox. And so in some ways, you're pointing to something that's very interesting, and your classic explanations of, health disparities by economic gaps, economic and health disparities going hand in hand, there's a paradox when you look at particular groups that is really not yet understood. Well, and actually, thank you for that prompt. We are in the process right now of doing an Asian American community study where we are hearing from over 2,000 Asian residents here in the Houston area, because Asian doesn't mean anything to a lot of individuals. We've decided to put under that category. And so we want to try to better understand these different groups, their different experiences, their different resources, their different attitudes, preferences, beliefs, all of it. To not necessarily call attention to our differences, but to just make us better aware of these different experiences that exist in the world. Yes.
Is it on? I'm going back and forth between questions about awareness, but in both directions. Are the Houstonians and Harris Countyans being aware of the work you're doing, and the other direction as well? Thank you, awareness. But then you made it clear to me, that your survey is apparently just about the most important tool that you use to become aware of what's going on out here, and getting the most of us involved in your studies. So, you mentioned expanding your survey. So I guess my question is going to be, how are you going to find those people, and it was also having to do with overlapping the population that you've been using every year. You don't go looking for the same people every year, surely, 7,000 or 5,000, whichever one it is. Do you? Do you repeat people, or do they fall out and die or whatever, and then you have to pick them up somewhere else?
Yes to all of that.
How does that all But you're going to branch out into the other counties.
Yes.
And so how are you going to make those groups aware
Gotcha.
of your thing? Okay.
Cool, awesome. Lovely questions. And so in terms of getting our information out into the community, it is something that we are grappling with regularly. We want to make sure that we're getting it into the hands of particular individuals, those that we're partnering with. So we are regularly meeting with folks at the United Way to share this information out with them, with school districts, with Harris County Public Health, putting this information into the hands of those folks. There are other folks, there are so many other folks that need to be getting this information as well. And so we, again, you know, I can point to our website and sort of say, hey, it's there, but unless you're looking for it, how do you know it's happening? And so that's where, again, genuinely, this type of opportunity is so important to me personally, to us as an organization, because if nothing else, if there's just somebody who walks out of here and goes, I got to tell this person about this organization, I think they're doing work they're interested in, it helps to begin building this web of knowledge and information that we can begin to learn from and hear from one another, and we hear from the community. And so again, like, it's something we're constantly working to improve on because it is so important. It doesn't do any good for us to squirrel away information and then pretend like, I don't understand why you don't know this thing. Well, how did we go about communicating it? So there's that piece of it we're continuing to work on. In terms of the sample itself, we are in fact following the same people year after year after year. And one of the reasons that we are doing that is because what we want to do is when we talk about something changing, we want to be able to say, hey, it's not just because I drew a different sample. It's not because I heard from different people this year, that's why this number changed. No, something changed for that individual. And so this is a new effort on our part, I will add that. But it is us following the same 5,000 people over time. And then in terms of our expansion into places like Fort Bend and Montgomery County, as well as, you brought up a very important point. When you follow people over time, people move, people decide they're no longer interested in participating, people peace out from this rock, and you know, all of those above, you know, that and other things means we need to add more and more people along the way. And so when that happens, one of the things that we are doing is what we call freshening, and so we will recruit people and we start with addresses. A lot of research right now is being done that starts on the internet. And it says, hey, you tech-savvy person, would you please come and take our survey that you've agreed that you'll do surveys over time? We start from the perspective of mailers. Different addresses, different apartment complexes, trailer parks, single-family homes, everybody's involved. But we're starting with that address because, yes, we're trying to eventually get you to respond to a survey online. But we want to try to get a hold of people from an address-based approach so that we're hearing from as much variety of people as we can, and not just those folks who've signed up for things like YouGov or Mechanical Turks or other types of online panels. I'm not here to rail against them, I promise, but it's a question that we have, and I think as we are so increasingly desperate for understanding the variety, again, of experiences that are out there, are we getting the appropriate, mix of individuals into our research is something we need to be increasingly grappling with. Oh, sorry, you got it back.
Is this turned on?
Yep, I got you.
You can, okay, thanks. I have a real sometime 2 to 5 years ago, back in distant history, I read an article that a predictor of an area's future growth was that artists would be attracted to that area.
Okay.
Does that resonate with anything that you've found or discovered in your research?
Also, watch out for craft breweries, too. No. I've seen that research. It's very interesting. I think, sorry, I don't mean to make light of it. There are some pretty comical correlations that are out there from time to time. And one of them is genuinely craft breweries and gentrification. And so it is something to keep an eye on, right? Is like when you have an area that you're reinvesting in, that you're rejuvenating. Like one of the things I want to sort of say is like I am using the word gentrification here with the definition of investment, reinvestment, rejuvenation. The issue is never, ever gentrification. It is always and forever displacement. And I think, especially if we look around Houston at some of the neighborhoods that have that have been failed by the city, by the county, to actually be invested in over decades, a century of policy in place to get us to where we are right now on East X Jensen, okay? A century of policy to get us where we are right now in Kashmir Gardens. Like, for us to sit here and say, well, we can't gentrify it, that's bad. No, you need to be investing. You need to be rejuvenating those areas. You just need to do it with policy that keeps in place the people that are there. Don't invest in a community for those who can move into it, right? And so like that's where I sit here and go, it's not the craft brewery, it's not the artists that you can point the finger at and say, hey, look what you did to this neighborhood. It's point to City Hall, point to the county, point to developers, point to people who have the power to put into place policies that say you should have roads that actually work. You should have drainage that doesn't put you underwater. This is a basic kind of like, thing we should be able to do for those who are there. And for those who have watched their neighborhood deteriorate around them, not because of neglect or like lack of want, but because the policies have been in place to invest anywhere else practically. And so I just like, yes. So I want to say like, we shouldn't be scared of these things going in and gentrifying. We should encourage them. We should applaud them. We just have to make sure that we're not ignorant of the fact that if you allow for gentrification to run unchecked, you will be gentrifying it for people to move into it, not for those who are already living there.
I think he just started a movement.
Yeah, so I was going to say, go off. My question, I think, piggybacks on what you were saying about expanding the survey and the research. I was curious if the research will start including other identifying factors that relate to health. Specifically, I'm curious about the LGBTQ community, especially trans and non-binary folks, and what are the health disparities there?
Thank you for bringing that up. We've put out 3 research briefs on lesbian, gay, and bisexual individuals based on Harris County residents. We do not yet have a sufficiently large sample of trans-identifying individuals to feel confident in trying to put out that research without, now I'm a nerdy researcher. It's a sample size challenge, right? Like you want to make sure that the information you're putting out is reflective of a group of individuals and that it's not necessarily being guided by such a small number that the statistics could be actually pulled and swayed in ways that are not reflective of the population that they're trying to be reflective of. And so that has been our big hesitation to put out anything on trans. I think right now we have about like 25 individuals in our sample. And so it is a question that we ask. We ask sexual identity. No, sexual identity I think is the right word. It's not orientation. Sorry, that's the distinction I'm trying to draw here between identity and orientation. We ask identity. We do not get into orientation. We also ask gender identity. And we do that using previous guidance from the CDC. So we will continue to collect that information, and once we arrive at a place where we are feeling like, I mean, really the goal is not that far away. Like 50 to 100 gives us enough individuals to begin to try to say something. So again, I'm not trying to say like, oh, it's going to be forever. We could be getting there soon, wanting to acknowledge we just do not want to overstate what our data is able to say. One thing I will throw out there is that Avery here at the Montrose Center, why am I blanking on her last name? The CEO of Montrose Center. And Tammy Wallace at the LGBTQ Chamber of Commerce. There's a conversation right now about how do we hear from a community that is oftentimes silenced and oftentimes invisible, and that Kinder is working with them to figure out what it might look like to do an LGBTQ+ community survey. Working through those organizations, building those pathways of trust, because who am I? You don't know me, so why would I tell you very personal, intimate information about myself? I don't know what you're going to do with it. I don't know who you're going to share with. I get it, right? And so what we're trying to think through at Kinder is how do we build through organizations that have built some of that trust and goodwill within communities, to have them help be those gatekeepers, to be those champions within communities. Let us hear from those populations and then be able to put that research back out. In terms of what we've learned so far, bisexual individuals in particular in Houston are going through some very big challenges right now. And as we've begun to inspect that a little bit more closely, it does look like it's very much community driven. That there is such a thing as a gay community, there is such a thing as a lesbian community. Is there a bi community? Do people know how to identify that? How does that look for different folks? One of the things that's really remarkable within the context of the bisexual data is the large number of Hispanic young men identifying as bisexual right now, which is remarkable thinking about historical cultural norms of machismo and what it meant to be a man within Hispanic culture. But it also seems to align with some of the trends that Mexico City is seeing right now. Working with a colleague of mine, Karen Pren, connecting with different individuals throughout Mexico. Because when we first saw that data, I was like, well, crap. This is gonna sound bad, we've been lied to. My other thought was actually we translated this question wrong, because it was in Spanish, and I was like, oh, there was a cultural competency moment that we just messed up. And so she reached out to some of her colleagues at Mexico City. They're a Hispanic scholar up in I think it was like New Jersey, and then maybe somebody out in LA, and just asked the question, are they seeing any sort of an uptick in bisexual identification among Hispanic young men? And their response all came back, yes. That bisexual is perhaps not the label that is being used right now. In part, it is an absence of label that folks are using, but that bisexual becomes their closest to what they're identifying as. And so it's very fascinating to see these different things sort of emerging through those data. But there is definitely an importance to call attention to the variety of different populations that are here. One of our ultimate goals is to not just call attention to singular elements of people's identity, but recognizing the intersectionality that exists. And in some ways, that's what we were just talking about, right? Like if there's a sexual identity question, but then there's a race ethnicity identity question layered on top of that. Excuse me. And so, yes. And that research, to the degree you're interested in it, like I said, there's 3 research briefs that are out. It's on our website. Please feel free to check those out. Lesbian, gay, bisexuals are the focus of those. Gender identity is not, and again, a sample size issue.
This is going to be our last question.
Dan, thank you so very much for coming to present to us today, but also for the work that you're doing. Now, one of the things that we're starting to see in the sciences community is that reports that we've been relying on, data that we've been relying on, is no longer being readily made available or even procured. In the state of Texas, in particular, after the maternal mortality board, I don't believe, is meeting anymore. So can you talk a little bit about how you intend to collect some of that data that you have presented to us going forward? Or if you want to just walk away now and sob, that's fine.
I'm going to head out the window. I'm so frustrated by it. If you've got a good idea, sorry, I'm going to go on a tangent for just a hot second. If you've got a good idea, then the data will support it. It just will. If you're right and I'm wrong, I'm the idiot here, data, information, research is going to give me that insight. And now then it's then on me to be like, oh shit, okay. Like, yeah, my bad, you're right. Okay, so how can we use that and make better decisions going forward? So it aggravates me that we're not even going to pretend anymore like there's a good idea out there. Because if you really genuinely thought that the idea that was being proposed and promoted was good, then you would say, get that data out. Share it, collect it, share it, because it's going to show you I'm right, you're wrong, let's go everybody. You know you're wrong. You know it's not a good idea, but you are opting to, rather than allow for there to be a public dialogue around what is the best path forward, I'm going to shut it down by removing any access to information. I'm going to shut it down by removing data. Do we have any maternal mortality information post-Dobbs? I don't think we do. So we have no idea how many women are being murdered right now by a stupid policy that was put into place for no other reason. I'm venturing way off my research right now. I'm venturing way off my research. Okay, I hear you on that. But it's just like, that is terrifying. We genuinely don't know. And so there's not even an opportunity to be able to sit here and like pull forward another court case that says, I'm sorry, you're murdering Hispanic and Black and Asian women and poor women. And we just can't even have that conversation because we don't know. And every time it seems like maybe something's going to sneak out, they're just shutting it back down again. And now data's being pulled off from federal websites that has been there for years. I mean, and we went through and we just download. Do you need that data? No, not right now, exactly. And there's another part of me that wants to see what goes back up there, and now I'm in conspiracy land. But like, there's a part of me that is concerned if we rely on some of these data to help understand the conditions that we are in and the challenges that we are facing. And if those data points start moving, how are we going to be able to know what that challenge is? How are we going to be able to take steps to confront these things if we cannot trust the data sources in which this information is coming from? And so for me, part of like this, I'm not even going to call it a silver lining. It's just like the fire under the backside of this moment right now is the data we're collecting by hearing from residents is more important than it's ever been. It is more important that we are recording, documenting, and putting that out, which is one of the things we're working on, is getting this information out, not just the findings, but the data themselves, so that we can just, again, we don't replace the CDC. We're not going to replace ACS. But can we just get information out there? Because again, at the end of the day, I'll go back to like, if you've got a good idea, then it will stand up on its merits and the data will support that idea. And if you don't, we need to be able to confront that and we need to be able to change pathways and courses. And so it's terrifying right now to think about what we're going through from like a data, truth, reality perspective. But I also think that makes it more important for each and every single one of us to be willing to question, be reflective, and figure out what are sources that we can trust, what are sources that we may need to be more skeptical of, and just hold on. So. Awesome. Thank you all.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much. All right. Okay, so are y'all good for one more song? All right, before we head out, or I guess we're not heading out. Today is Bring Your Own Lunch, so lunch today will be here. You're welcome to go out and get some lunch, come back. I know we have some food here, and usually people bring more than enough to share. So we will be in here for lunch. And then before we have our final song, I do want to remind y'all one more time, so we'll have Saturday and Sunday next weekend. It's March 1st, 3 p.m. in here, and then at our normal time on Sunday. March 1st will be the Fish Shark from American Humanist Association. We're kind of putting it out there late, so I just want to make sure everyone is fully aware. And so with that, we'll have our final song.
All right. First of all, I want to say thank you, Houston Oasis, for having us here. It's our pleasure always to perform for you, so thank you so much. And I just want to plug 2 events that are coming up. One that is free, which is coming up March 9th with the Houston Professional Musicians Association, where you have women from the Musicians Union performing at the Post, which will be March 9th, a Sunday. The music begins from 1 to 8, different acts every hour, and my group is at 5. So feel free to come. It's family friendly. Anyone can come in and out and go as you please. And the second event, I'll be playing with my jazz sextet on March 23rd, a Sunday, as well at 8 p.m. at Monk's Jazz Club. We're premiering my project Under a Lavender Sky, which is a Latin jazz arrangements that are created. So if you guys are in the Austin area, also can live stream. And anyway, I appreciate your support. We're going to do our last song called Almost Like Being in Love. What a day this has been, what a rare mood I'm in. Well, it's almost like being in love. There's a smile on my face for the whole human race. Well, it's almost like being in love. All the music of life seems to be like a bell that is ringing for me. And from the way that I feel when those bells start to peal, I could swear I was falling, I could swear I was falling. It's almost like being in love. What a day this has been, what a rare mood I've been in. Well, it's almost like being in love. There's a smile on my face for the whole human race. Well, it's almost like being in love. All the music of life seems to be like a bell that is ringing for me. And from the way that I feel when those bells, they start to peal, I could swear I was falling, I could swear I was falling. Well, it's almost like being in love. Thank you very much.
Thank y'all so much. And thank you to Dan for being here today. A wonderful presentation. And like you said, the work y'all are doing is definitely going to be so much more important. It was important before, even more important now. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. Like I said, lunch will be here after this. And reminder, do the survey if you have not already done it, and we will see you next week.